Hello, listeners. Good Tuesday to you wherever you are. This is Ragini Anand on 20th of April 2021, speaking to you from a beautifully sunny London day where the gardens are all opening up, the blossoms are all out, the young leaves have all started to arrive on the trees. I have been working in the garden today, feeling relieved that I'm not in lockdown. London has somewhat opened. I know that there are other parts of the world which are going through a second, third, fourth wave. So I'm just kind of giving you an update of what's happening here. Restaurants have opened, the outside spaces, non-essential shops are open, and we're able to have our hair cut. So people are looking a bit like Yetis, and they're beginning to look a little fresher and, well turned out. So it's all good news, and not so good news around the world. So I think this scenario is going to be with us for a while. So whoever is feeling or reeling from it, my heart reaches out to you. Today is the 8th moon, the moon of Lord Kalabhairava. Kalabhairava in the Vedic tradition is the Lord of time and space. So if we wish to get out of this time and space and move beyond it, where we can experience another dimension, then it is Kalabhairava that we turn to. He looks like a fierce god, but he is a lord of having no karma. So he is an aspect of Lord Shiva, and today is his day. So for those of you who want to connect to Lord Kalabhairava, today is the day to do it. Now we are on the second day of our wealth stroke money talk, and we talked about the Vedic way of looking at wealth last week, and we unraveled the concept of wealth and the depth of what it means to be wealthy. That understanding is critical in understanding the Vedic way of looking at wealth. Now, everybody wants wealth. I don't think there are many people really, when they say they're not after wealth, if you start digging, there's, like we did last week in question time, when you start digging, even it's ambiguous when we say wealth. We are still looking for wealth in one shape or form. We sometimes get mistaken with what wealth means. Let's again define it. When we become creative, when we are intensely creative and active and excited with that creativity and contributing and feeling recognized for our contribution from that inner creativity that we exude, then the outcome is naturally wealth. So that's a very broad definition of wealth. Now, I would like to argue that nature itself emulates wealth. Let me give you an example. Do you know what happens to wildlife, just nature, when it's left alone? If you go to the Himalayan mountains, where nature is just left with her intelligence of consciousness, what does she do? She thrives into making a beautiful forest. That is the creative expression of the intelligence of consciousness when left wild. That's exuding creativity and demonstrating wealth. So do you know what happens to wildlife when just given conscious creativity of a human mind? Like I was in the garden today. I was using my conscious creativity in my garden, and that still thrives. I'm going to create a beautiful garden with roses and mulberry and apple trees and plum trees, and I'm going to have a beehive. I'm creating. I am creating wealth for myself. And if somebody sees value in something I am creating, if I was to then convert it or trade it, it would become money. So contributing is a default nature of consciousness. This is our combined wealth. Wealth comes from contributing. So we have associated wrong thinking around wealth most of the time. It often has guilt associated with it. I know this was true for me for many years. Whether we make money or not, we often have guilt associated with it. And I would like to say that both those states of mind are wrong. And I've learned that it is wrong by making the mistake of thinking of guilt around wealth. The Vedic culture really allows you to drop the idea of guilt. They see that money is a symbol of our creativity. It's a symbol of our energy to birth things from our inner space. We talked about the inner space when it's very quiet and vibrant, that it becomes a womb from which all creative energy blossoms. And in that creativity, the sea of potential, abundance is possible, both in the outer nature and in our inner nature. So we need to follow our inner guidance, this inner space, by being quiet and without any incompletions, to allow this creative energy to flow, and then wealth becomes a natural outcome. And then we just always have enough wealth to do the things we truly need and want to do. Now, one idea that was planted in my head very significantly when I was doing my early seeking work with Dr. Pillai, he very clearly stated that a shortage of wealth often is a reflection of our inner blocks. Okay, so he always said that poverty is a state of mind. And I've tested this concept and I believe it's true. Learning how to act effectively in the world, we look at the external world and we're always looking at how to effectively navigate that world. We build all sorts of financial structures and go out to earn lots of money. And we've done that really well. We've learned how to act effectively in this place that we called the world. However, because we do not take any guidance from our inner space, we really do act from fear and greed and competition and struggle. we create scenarios where we pay a high price for the money that we create in the external world, because we really haven't been guided by our inner space. I've got a good example here. After many years of working in the corporate life, I one day asked myself the question. I seriously sat down and I thought, what is the cost of me going to work in the corporate world? So I started totting up everything that I would spend in order to make myself be able to belong in that corporate world. So there was the clothes that I had to buy, the suits and the, expensive attire. There would be, making sure I was turned out with, good haircuts and makeup and tights and coats and manicures. And, then I added up the cost of actually buying, tube tickets, tube passes to get to work, or petrol, or having a car. I totted up the time that I lost, because it wasn't just 9 to 5. I would spill into my family time. So all that extra time I started costing. I started to cost everything that it took for me to go to work. And I had a child to look after, so I used to have to buy in expensive time of a nanny, or buy in the time of somebody who would come and clean the house and iron my clothes and, occasionally cook for us. If you totted all of that up, the actual money that you made, and I calculated this, it was next to nothing. And then I thought, what am I doing this? What am I doing this for? I seriously had a sort of a breakthrough moment. That came from the inner space of thinking. All my living was coming from an inner space of unconscious thinking. And when I was working in the corporate world, there was some kind of inner space justification that kept saying, if I have enough money and if I have status, I will be happy and I'll be able to buy X, Y, and Z, and other people will find me more attractive, and, I will be more, how can I say it, have more fame and all of these things. But it all amounted to a big problem in the end, because I just couldn't juggle all those balls up in the air all the time. I was traveling around the world, all over the place, and hardly had any time for friends or family, or myself, let alone. So my guru says very well, creating wealth is not a sin, but only grabbing wealth for grabbing's sake, without actually contributing to yourself, your family, and wider world. It's really not worth anything. You're just on a hamster wheel thinking you are getting somewhere, but the actual gain is so little that you haven't even really quantified it. So there's a lot of rethinking that needs doing. We also need to remove the guilt of wealth. So many people carry the guilt of wealth from their inner space. And guilt of wealth is not just from having wealth, but also not having wealth. Both states have guilt associated with it. Both of these states of mind are a problem. I've known very rich men who have guilt of the money that they have, that unconsciously they begin to drink alcohol to remove that guilt, because there is this emptiness that they feel, constantly filling or feeling inside. And others of us glorify poverty. So you've got these two oscillating states, guilt from making money and then glorifying poverty. And we create our self-worth from glorifying poverty. And I really think that this is truly a losing proposition. It means at some level you've accepted that to take responsibility for your life is not essential. You have intense hatred for work and creativity and everything that people buys with money. You have hatred for that. And if you continue down this path, as I did for a while, you'll become depressed. You cannot justify poverty to yourself. So I had to then look deeply at the Vedic culture and understand some of the teachings, because that's the tradition I come from, and said, what was the teachings of the Vedic tradition? Because you always see wealth being celebrated, life being active. And the Vedic way of looking at it, we explored last week, but there are these two main thought processes when it comes to wealth. You have two deities. We talked about Vishnu last week, about being the maintenance god, and if anything needs maintaining, it requires wealth in the way in which we describe it, the 16 dimensions of wealth. But there is another thing that we didn't discuss last week, which is Lakshmi. If Lakshmi is the currency, i.e. the energy that moves, that kind of goes from one hand to the other, Kubera, the lord of Kubera, holds wealth. He's the treasury. So what happens with wealth, if you want to create and maintain wealth, as shown to us by the Vedic culture, then Lakshmi allows us to create it, but Kubera is known to maintain it, is the treasury. He holds it and determines at what time, how that wealth should be distributed. And that's an important aspect of consciousness of wealth. So if we accept that money isn't a symbol of infinite energy, and we think of lack is the main thing in nature, we will become stuck with only two outcomes. If we choose to have a lot of money, we will feel guilty. And if we do without it, we'll begin to resent those who have it. So I want you to kind of think about that. We'll come on to Kubera and Lakshmi in a minute. As I said, neither are winning propositions, choosing to have a lot of money and feeling guilty, and not having money and resenting others that have it. They're both losing propositions. But then there is another layer of thinking that even I experienced, in my early days, is that a thought was injected into me that said, you have to work hard, you have to sacrifice, and you have to struggle to make your money. I mean, who puts these thoughts in us? And why do we buy these thoughts without questioning them? Who wants to work hard and sacrifice and struggle to make a living? Because when you have that kind of a thought process, you're going to just burn yourself out, as I did working in the corporate world for many years in marketing and sales. I felt physically sick and emotionally drained. Almost 70% of my time I was in that state. You have all the worldly success, but you feel empty and deprived inside. What's the point? Or worse still, seeing this, you refuse to go after it at all. So, there are the others who will say, oh, look at Ragini, she's burning herself out. I don't want any money. I don't want a corporate life. I don't want any of that. And what happens when you are seeking and spiritual and sensitive, you tend to do this. You tend to say, I don't want any of that headache. I don't want any of that. And you deny all the wealth elements of Lakshmi we spoke of last week. And without Lakshmi, we take away our Laksh, our goal for life, and everything else that is needed to support us in getting to our goal of life. And one could say that in the Vedic culture, the only goal of life is enlightenment. And that too needs money. Because without money or wealth, in a broader sense, you're not going to get there. So the masculine or active way of making money is to go after something, which is what you do when you're in the corporate world. Okay? And that's what I was doing. Even though I'm a woman, I was masculine, I was active, and I was making money, and I was going after something, status and, pay rises and what have you. But the feminine, which is in all of us, is a receptive way of making money. And that is all about attracting what you want to yourself. The woman attracts, the man goes out, the masculine goes out, the female attracts. We need both of these states, outward to make towards our goal, the Laksh, and taking risks. But we also need to nurture ourselves, and we forget that. We have to appreciate ourselves. We have to listen to what we really want in our inner world so that we can attract what we want, not what the world wants. So that feminine inner world stuff has been denied for a very long period of time, living in the male world or the very heavily masculine world. So this nurturing was what I wasn't doing when I was, nurturing my inner feeling, my inner wants. I wasn't doing, I needed to have a break. I needed to just lie down for a week. I needed to go for a walk in the morning. I needed time for my yoga. I needed time for my puja. I was denying everything in that male world. So what I'm saying in a long way is that you need to learn to receive, but you also need to learn to give to yourself. This way you will not be blocked in any way when it comes to wealth. Balancing ourselves is important. The inner world and the outer world is very important. But balancing at other levels is also important. Sometimes when it comes to wealth, we spend a lot. We become spendthrifts, like I certainly am a spendthrift. And I need to learn to budget and save. And what I found was when I was working, money was coming into one hand but going with the other. As I told you, the cost of working was so huge that, I was never saving anything for a rainy day. So balancing that is also important. Saying no to what you normally say yes to is also a balancing act and an important technique to learn. And learning to enjoy doing what you hate is also a balancing act. So all of these things are relevant and important. But one thing I have learned with wealth and it's become a kind of a truth for me, is that money flows into whatever I truly create or want to create. I have to truly want it. So I'll have to give you an example of this, because without examples it really doesn't come alive. And it would have been 7 years ago now, my mother was turning 80. And my brother and I decided that we must, really celebrate her life at this stage and get all her people, all her family and friends that are all flung into the far corners of the world, from America to Australia. We wanted to bring them all together, and we thought we would host a party in Mumbai. Now, that party was going to cost a lot of money in the way that I had envisioned it, and my brother had envisioned it. So not only did my brother had put aside a pot of money, but I was kind of organizing it. So I needed my own, pot of money. And when I calculated it, because I had to take my daughter and my husband and be in India for a number of months, I've calculated it at a certain amount of money. It's quite a large sum. And because we wanted to do it really in a good way, not sort of cutting corners. So to cut a long story short, I worked out that I would need, £14,000, which is a lot of money. And I didn't have it. And I thought, oh, well, I'll just borrow it over time and pay it off, over course of time. But I'm not making this up. About a week or two before I was leaving, I got a call from a Japanese student. I used to teach English in those days, where people would come and stay in my house and learn from me. And this particular girl who was coming from Japan said, I'm coming for a whole year, and I'm going to pay my most of my money up front. Can I have your bank account? And so I calculated it, and lo and behold, it came to £14,000. She transferred the money, and I'm not joking. I went with cash in my hand, and, it was just too bizarre. And I've noticed this again and again, that money flows into whatever you have created in your life with all your heart and your passion. It just works that way. Another example, I've moved into this house in Kew Gardens. We were doing it up, and we had a pot of money, and I must have put the last set of curtains in the last room, and my budget dried up, and everything was finished. Everything was just... So what I'm trying to say is, I want you to try and have an idea that money does flow, and check in your life when you've really, really, really wanted something, and you've really been creative and had your inner space saying, I'm going to have this. The money will flow. But I'm working on a new mantra now. My mantra at the moment is, and I have a problem with this, and I share it with some of my friends. I keep saying I only have money for what I need. And I have some deep-seated belief that it's not okay to have more than what you need. So if a friend of mine asked me if I could help him with a certain amount of money, and I said, look, I have not got any savings. And he said, I cannot believe you, because the lifestyle you lead, you're always here, there, and everywhere, flying around the world. What do you mean you have no savings? And I said, I'm really telling you, I fly by the seat of my pants. I go from place to place with with like almost zero balance in my account. Now I've noticed that this is due to my belief that I keep saying to myself, I only have money for, I need money for what I want. I don't want to have the headache of having too much because I'll get distracted and I'll overspend on wrong things and, you know. And what's happening, I've noticed, is because I entertain that belief, the extra money that I make, new needs come about that straps me from that money. So money literally comes with one hand and goes out the other. New things that I never imagined happen, you know, like something will be needed to be repaired in the house, or my daughter will need something. So I always am at sort of zero balance. So now I'm working on this concept of treasury and currency of the Vedic culture, learning to be a treasurer of wealth and the currency of wealth. So being both Kubera and Lakshmi is important. So I will let you know if I succeed in doing that at some point. But it hopefully will make you think also, have in your life, you are holding beliefs that might be having this kind of a, you know, outward creation in your life. So now I want to move on to, as we always do in the second part of our talks, as to how to calibrate your wealth journey and your wealth coefficient in some way. And what I would suggest you do, maybe not now, but I've given you examples in my life, is if you could write down all the ways in which you block your own desires and limit the flow of your own creativity. That is an important place to analyze how you yourself are creating the blocks of wealth flowing into your life. Write down all the ways in which you block your own desires and limit the flow of your own creativity. You will be surprised, you know, like the example I gave you, where I hold very dear belief, which is I don't want any more than, you know, having too much wealth only corrupts you. You know, I just want enough for what I need. And that's created this situation where wealth comes in and wealth goes out. I never have anything for a rainy day. And maybe that's not a bad thing, I don't know. But now I want to experiment with my life in a new way, to be a treasurer and a spender and earner. So that's something you can do as a calibration mechanism. Now, the second thing that you can do, just finding my notes here, is if you could rate yourself out of 10. So 10 is very good and 1 is not very good. On all of the dimensions we spoke of last week, you know, gold and money, do you have enough to tie you over and make you do everything you want? So, you know, 10 out of 10 will be you always have enough money in your bank account to do whatever you want. Do the same thing with knowledge. Remember, we said that wealth also requires knowledge. Are you always able to have enough information and resources to do what you want in life? Remember, wealth or Lakshmi is lux or goal. Are you able to have all the knowledge to go after your goal? What about your ambition? Rate that as well. Do you have enough or high enough ambition? What about intelligence? Do you have enough intelligence to do what you want to do? What about your morality? Can you always discern between what's right and wrong? Do you always have enough strength? What about valor? Do you have enough courage to face danger when you don't have money? Are you confident that you can get through that? How do you rate yourself? Are you always happy so that you can always be in that creative space? Do you take care of your beauty? Do you look after yourself, to be sort of socially acceptable? What about your health? How do you rate that? Because you can't create without health. What about victory? Have you had enough victory over your patterns, things that you harbor? How do you rate yourself? Do you have longevity? How do you rate yourself? Are you going to be around long enough in your mind to make what you want to make happen? What about your fame? Do you have enough people at your hand to draw from? Do they trust you and believe you that you can draw from them when you need them? And family, how supportive are they of your goals? And how do you rate that? So write your goals in this area. All these areas is the next thing after you've rated yourself. And where you've had a poor score, I suggest you draw up some goals in that area. Okay, so if it is, I don't know, you don't have enough strength to achieve the goals you have set out to achieve, then what are you going to do to develop that strength? Write down 2 or 3 things. It's extremely important that we do this kind of conscious thinking about wealth creation. And then I always talk to you about mantras and yantras and power spots in this second part. So one of the mantras that you can start to experiment with is Shreem Brazi, which is a Dr. Pillai's mantra. And I remember when I was moving from sort of poverty consciousness to wealth consciousness, I did a lot of work with Shreem Brazi. Doing pujas of Lakshmi every Friday, giving a petal at a time and saying Shreem Brazi, Shreem Brazi, and really connecting with that wealth consciousness of Lakshmi. You can also have a Shri Yantra, which is the currency yantra, and have a Lakshmi, which is all about currency. And start experimenting with that. Now, I'm going to be experimenting with the treasury side. Remember, I said I have a blind spot about, creating a treasury. So I'm going to work with Kubera and his mantra, and I haven't worked with it, I have to say. I do have his yantra, but I haven't worked with him consciously, and I'm going to start. And his mantra is Kuberaya Namaha, I believe. And I'm going to start chanting his mantra. And he has a divine yantra, which is 9 squares with a series of numbers in their 20s. So all of the 20s, 27, 20, 25, and so on. And each column and row divinely add up to the number 72. Okay? You may want to look at the Kubera Yantra. Yantras are nothing but a divine, Dr. Pillai calls it a machine. Okay, it's like a very unusual machine that can bring in the energy of Kubera into your altar, into your space, by just being in that space. So you can do, you can connect with it, and I do have the yantra, but I don't connect with it in the way, let's say, I connect with Shiva or Lakshmi or Ganesha or Vishnu. But I'm going to start, because I think I would like to build up a treasury, and I'm going to make that my next goal. So Kubera, for treasury, Kubera, for currency, Lakshmi, and of course Vishnu is the maintainer. Maintaining what? If you go to Vishnu, you want to maintain the 5 aspects of the universe. You may want to maintain creativity. Okay, creativity is an aspect of the universe. You may want to maintain maintenance itself. Maintenance is an aspect of universe. You may want to maintain destruction. There might be some things in your life, like negativity, like patterns that you're working on, that you want to destroy. So again, you want to go to Vishnu to maintain those patterns, the destruction of those patterns. You may want to maintain coming out of delusion, which is another aspect, because we are in delusion when we harbor ridiculous thinking. So you may want to maintain coming out of that delusion. And the final aspect is liberation. So you may want to maintain the work that you do that allows you to become liberated, brings more freedom into your life, not being chained down like I was with corporate world. When I came off it, I felt liberated. My time was now my oyster. I could do what I liked with it. And I'm not saying that you frit away your time, because that also is negative thinking and poverty thinking. When you think it's okay to just sit on a beach and do nothing, that's not going to create all the dimensions of wealth in your life. So there is a lot more to all these concepts of wealth that you need to immerse yourself in your consciousness, so you can become aware of it. Now, what about the power spots of Lakshmi and Kubera? Let me talk to you about a few that I particularly keep on top of. I've already mentioned in a previous session my love for Mahalakshmi Temple in Mumbai. Whenever I think of Mahalakshmi Temple, I think of the beautiful temple in Mumbai called Mahalakshmi, and I always go there if I'm there, and especially on a Friday, you will see me there. So that's one. Then there is a Mahalakshmi temple of repute at Kolhapur in Maharashtra, which is a way out of the way from Mumbai, quite a long way, but it's a power spot. And you have the Ashtalakshmi. Remember, we talked about the 8 forms of Lakshmi, and I love this temple in Chennai, which is on the beachfront, and it has the 8 Lakshmis in different kind of sanctums, and whenever I'm in Chennai, I will go there. And in terms of Kubera, there's one on Narmada banks, Narmada being a river, which is of huge repute, but I haven't been there yet, but it's on my list. But now that I'm working on the treasury consciousness, I'll have to make sure I go there. And there's one in Vadodara in Gujarat called the Kubera Bandari Temple, which I will also visit now that I'm trying to birth the consciousness of Kubera into myself. So those are the power spots that I can think of and would ask you to look at. And with that, I just want to just say, when it comes to wealth consciousness from an NLP perspective, neuro-linguistic programming, and the coaching perspective, there are 3 things you need to develop in yourself. And if you were working with me, I would make you understand that there is always a possibility. Okay? Do not be too quick to decide what is impossible. So how do we make yourself more able to accept this quality that possibility is always there for you? The next thing is ability. Have one basic belief that you have not yet reached the limit of what you are capable of. So you're always able. And don't talk about your limitations, which is another thing. Do not bring negative talk into your language. Do not keep talking about your limitation. Oh, I can't do that. I tried that and I failed. Stop yourself. Catch yourself from saying, I can't. I'm not able. Improve your quotient of ability and possibility. And the third thing is, you are worthy and you deserve to achieve your goals. Always know that. And notice any uncomfortable feelings that you get. You know, when you think, I want to achieve that goal, and you think, oh, I don't think I can face that. That sounds too difficult. You know, they will point to obstacles and self-doubts, the idea of this sort of worthiness. We often kind of sabotage ourselves by saying we're not worthy of wealth and wealth consciousness. And develop positive affirmations that always make you believe that it's possible, you're able, and you're worthy. Okay, PAW. PAW is the technique. PAW. Easy to remember. Possibility, ability, and worthy. Everything you desire, if you can think it, it must be possible. You are able. I mean, we have people without limbs doing, the Olympics. There's always ability. And you're always worthy of achieving your goals. It's the rule of life that we are here to tap into the sea of potential and continue to create rose gardens. Just like nature creates beautiful forests, we are able to create anything we can dream of. Beautiful home, beautiful relationships, beautiful health, beautiful things that you want to be comfortable. And always being conscious of and knowing what is unconscious in terms of wealth. What is going to make you powerless? What thinking will make you powerless and what thinking will make you powerful is taking you up towards wealth. And if it's making you negative, as we discussed a few weeks ago about looting and the sun as identities, the looter was a powerless identity taking you down away from wealth. And the sun, or the quality of giving and always being positive and active, is a positive wealth giving consciousness idea. So with that, I've concluded my second talk on wealth, and I hope you found that useful. I will now open it up for any questions you may have. So it says, lovely message on how wealth is essential for spiritual growth. Yes, and I made a big mistake. This is for Cosmic D145. Wealth can help get mind at rest. Yeah, when we are incredibly sensitive and we become very empathetic to people in poverty, we begin to believe that, somehow we've got to emulate that poverty so that we can bring ourselves down to that level. And by doing so, we are empathizing or sympathizing with that quality. And that's a really dangerous state to get into. And as a spiritual seeker, it's very easy to have that empathy. But really look at it deeply, and you will see that it really is a proposition that takes you away from life rather than promotes life. So I'm glad that that resonated with you. And Floor 19 says, beautiful, how does one feel devotional towards Lakshmi? Devotion is having a feeling connection, sort of. My way of looking at devotion is I see Lakshmi as the most beautiful being who's achieved the height of all the 8 Lakshmis. And she's gentle and nurturing and always wanting to share her consciousness with me and to silently whisper in my ears what it is to be like her. Because she's a mother as well, don't forget. She's my mother, just like she's your mother. And if you open your heart to her, she will whisper to you silently and make herself be known. And just connect with her on a Friday, get a statue of Lakshmi, dress her up, put flowers on her. I even offer her jewelry and whatever. Twice a year I will buy her. I know it's crazy. I'll buy her. She loves gold, so I buy her some gold. And by giving it to her, I'm actually doing it to myself. I'm expanding my own consciousness towards wealth. So all these techniques, which may sound crazy, they have some incredibly deep psychological expansion that happens in you. So try it. So Lightson is saying thank you so much. And Rock UK is saying this is exactly what I needed. Thank you for saying that. I hope it helps you. If anybody has any other questions, by unmuting yourself, you can. If not, then I shall take leave and wish you a very beautiful week. Next week, we start a new segment on fun and recreation. So I'm looking forward to developing a Vedic solution around fun and recreation. I haven't kind of got there yet, so it'll be very interesting as to what I come up with for myself and hopefully for you. So until then, I wish you a very good day wherever you are. Thank you.